Boa tarde, gente boa. My Portuguese, I am afraid, is not good enough to do this in anything but English, so I will apologize both to you and to the translators in advance. As you heard in that very kind introduction, I've written a book about social media called Here Comes Everybody, and I will save you the trouble of reading it by giving you the 5-word summary. Group action just got easier. The idea behind the book is that the internet, mobile phones, applications built on top of it, have made it dramatically much easier for groups of people to come together, find each other, share things, and get things done. And rather than talk about that in the abstract, I'd like to just tell a story that I think illustrates some of what's changed. So the story starts January of last year. A fundamentalist group in the Mangalore province in India called Sri Ram Sena, Lord Ram's army. It's a Hindu fundamentalist group. Went out in the streets and attacked women who were drinking in public. And there was a video taken. Not only did they drag the women from the pub, they also were fighting with men who were trying to defend the women. And this was an attempt by Sri Ram Sena to enforce enforce their view of what the Hindu faith required of women living in society. The video, photos of the video were taken, and as is by now usual, became widespread on Flickr, on YouTube, on photo sharing services, video sharing services, and so forth. And it had the effect, this attack and the documentation had its desired effect, which is it made women afraid. And then one woman, Nisha Susan, decided she was going to do something about this. She thought that Sri Ram Sena's attack needed a response. And so she formed a Facebook group. And the Facebook group was called the Association of Loose, Forward, and Pub-Going Women. And the membership in that group, as you might imagine, ballooned over the course of a couple of days, right? Thousands of people, mostly women, but thousands of people poured in and joined this group. And they announced the Pink Chadi campaign. Chadi is, Pink Chadi campaign, Happy Valentine's Day to Sri Ram Sena. One of Sri Ram Sena's targets is Valentine's Day, the idea being that anyone seen celebrating Valentine's Day is creating an affront to the Hindu religion, and women in particular, by celebrating Valentine's Day, are seen to align themselves with romantic notions which are not appropriate in Sri Ram Sena's view. And so in response to these threats of violence, the Association of Loose, Forward, and Pub-Going Women said, this Valentine's Day we are going to send thousands of pairs of pink underwear to Sri Ram Sena. Sri Ram Sena, the joke buried in Hindu here is that Sri Ram Sena are often called chadi wearers, underwear wearers, because they wear khaki pants that look like large diapers. So the women here sent thousands of pairs of underwear to Sri Ram Sena in advance of Valentine's Day. This had a couple of different effects. The first and least important of the effects was on Sri Ram Sena themselves. They were obviously embarrassed, although they insisted that they were going to turn around and send appropriate Hindu dress to the women who sent the underwear, although they never actually did. The second, more important effect is that both India as a whole and the state of Mangalore became aware that there was a political constituency for making life safer for women. The sad truth of politics is we often expect politicians to do things because it would create a social good. But in fact, politicians often do things only when, or are spurred by, evidence of a large public good. And so by launching this campaign, not only were the women talking directly to Sri Ram Sena, they were also talking indirectly to the governments that were there to protect them. And the third effect it had was to give the women who participated a sense that they don't simply have to have the choice of going out and risking being attacked or staying home and surrendering their freedoms. There is a third choice, And that choice is now to use these kinds of tools. Tools like Facebook, tools like email, tools like mobile phones, to organize responses. Ordinarily, we would expect that Sri Ram Singh, an organization, could easily target women, not an organized group, and the women couldn't have an equivalently organized response. But what we see in this example is that in this case, when the women needed to organize, they had the tools to do it without having to be an organization in advance the way Singh is. And in recognition of this public protest, the Indian state actually clamped down on Singh, and there were no attacks on Valentine's Day. Singh had threatened to go out and attack anyone seen out in public in a romantic couple on Valentine's Day. And those attacks did not materialize, in part because Nisha Susan and the Association of Losers Forward and Outgoing Women had managed to communicate to the government how much this mattered. That change wasn't caused by these social tools, but it was enabled by them. And you have to be able to hold both of those senses in your mind at the same time. In the same way that the printing press didn't cause the Protestant Reformation, but the Protestant Reformation could not have happened without the printing press. Facebook did not cause the political protest in Bangalore, but the political protest in Bangalore could not have happened without Facebook. So there is this figure-8 loop between the media a society has and the uses society makes of media. Media makes new things possible, but it is social action that makes new things actual. So to make that same observation now on an absurdly grand historical canvas, we are living, and by that I mean our historical generation, is living through the largest increase in expressive capability in the history of the human race. And that's a big claim. I'm going to try and back it up. Oop. Sorry. You can give me the slides back. Thank you very much. Susan, is it all right? Here we are. Thank you. We got it. So, there have only been 4 changes in the media environment prior to today that are worth the label revolution. The first one, the most famous perhaps, the rise of the printing press, oil-based inks, all of the things that happened in Gutenberg's shop in the middle of the 1400s. Then, some hundreds of years later, there was a revolution in two-way communications. First the telegraph and then the telephone. Now we have conversational media. I can talk to you and you can talk back to me. We can carry on a conversation. Then, about 150 years ago, there was a string of revolutions in the encoding of media onto physical objects, the encoding of media other than text onto physical objects. First photographs, then sound, then moving images with sound. Right? And finally, about 100 years ago, was the harnessing of radio waves, the harnessing of electromagnetic spectrum to send sound and pictures through the air, radio and television. More like that? All right, sorry. For those of us my age and older, this is the media environment we grew up in. Right? This is what the 20th century was like. All of these 4 media were present in the 20th century, and they basically describe the media landscape of the 20th century. There's a curious asymmetry, though, in that media landscape, which is that the stuff that's good at creating groups is no good at creating conversations, and the stuff that's good at creating conversations is no good at creating groups. Right? I could either take one message and send it to thousands or even millions of people, and that's the way a printing press works. It's also the way a television tower works. It's the same pattern. Or I can have an interactive conversation with one other person. I can call you on the phone, you and I can converse. But there's nothing in the middle. There's nothing in the middle between the two-way, one-to-one pattern and the one-way, one-to-many pattern. Both of those patterns existed, but there wasn't anything bridging, which is one of the reasons the internet is such a big deal.